It's not a question of if there will be another round, it's a question of when there will be another round. There are already reports that the Iranians have replenished their ballistic missile systems. They're back to about 2,000 rockets that can strike now in Israel like they were before this 12-day war. The Saudis know that the country that is the most bent on preventing the Iranians, their arch nemesis, from getting nuclear weapons, is Israel. They want to be aligned with Israel.
Let's talk first about the political implications for Prime Minister Netanyahu, his Likud party, his governing coalition, as we head into 26. Elections are scheduled, they have to be held at least by October of next year, but they could be called at pretty much any moment. Do you have a sense, first of all, instinct on, or from your reporting, when you think these elections are going to be? And how do you think October 7th shapes that environment? Because basically, if Netanyahu and everybody else waits, they're going to be running on up to the third anniversary of October 7th.
I don't think Netanyahu wants Israelis going to the polls around the anniversary of October 7th. He wants to move away from October 7th. So if he can, he'll try to move it up slightly if he wants to try to get the most out of this government. Talk is maybe in September. The date to look at, Joel, is March. By end of March,
that's the budget.
Israel needs to pass a budget. If he passes a budget, smooth sailing until the moment he decides to bring down the government, dissolve the Knesset, and go to an election. My guess would be it would happen around June, and then we would have an election in September. If we can't pass a budget, and there's a good chance he won't be able to, because if the ultra-Orthodox don't agree, and the right-wing factions of his coalition don't agree, or whatever the circumstance might be, then we're going to be in an election already in June.
Because a failure to pass a budget by March 31st,
Knesset, the government
to go
falls.
To a new election,
exactly.
Right? It's automatic. So, which would mean the elections would be when then?
They would probably be in June, 3 months later, or 3.5 months later. They have to start to find the right Tuesday. Elections are always on Tuesday. Right. But it would be somewhere in the beginning of the summer.
Okay. Now, on the dramatic day when, I think it was October 13th, when all the Israeli live hostages come out of Gaza, and President Trump flies Air Force One in. It's pretty dramatic. He heads to the Knesset. He gives this fantastic speech. He gets a huge, multiple standing ovations. We covered all of it. And he basically bear hugs Bibi Netanyahu. And he basically, if Netanyahu wasn't getting this big endorsement from Trump, he would have been furious. Why are you interfering with Israeli politics? But Trump basically says, I don't know why you would get rid of this guy. Okay, there was October 7th, but look at all the great stuff that we've done since then.
Says to the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, give this guy a pardon, right? Because Netanyahu has this corruption trial that's continuing. Pardon him.
Bougie did not see that coming. And that was,
and so you saw an amazing bear hug from Trump. You saw that Trump gave probably, and you've worked in politics before, probably one of the greatest political endorsements that any politician could ever dream of.
On live television to the whole country.
That the whole nation is watching.
Of celebration. This wasn't hey, someday our plans are going to work and we're going to make Israel better. We're going to make Israel great again. It's going to be fantastic, Yaakov. No, that was the days that we all thought might not be able to happen. The miracle of all these live hostages coming out. So Trump was at the top, and he gave a bear hug. So the polling immediately following, in the weeks that followed, Bibi and Likud, his governing part, or his own personal party, Likud, shot up in a way that they've been underwater for the last 2 years, since October 7th. And Naftali Bennett and his as of yet unnamed right-wing party, Naftali Bennett has been the leader in all the polling, that he was much more likely to put together a government than Bibi. That sort of shifted, but now it seems to be shifting back. So how do you read, where are we right now as we come to the end of 26? The polls will be, there'll be a range of different polls, but what's your instinct as we head into 26? Is Bibi still riding the high of that bear hug and these successes, or is the balloon coming back down to earth? What is happening?
Israelis look at the end of the day, how do they vote? They vote over security. They vote over their welfare and how they feel as a people. They look at October 7th, obviously a disaster, a failure. Buck stops by Benjamin Netanyahu. But the last 2 years, and by the time we go to elections, it'll be 2.5 or maybe 3. The Middle East has changed, and it is a safer and more secure Middle East for the state of Israel. That's undeniable. That is the reality, and that is thanks to decisions that Benjamin Netanyahu has made as Israel's prime minister.
Including, I would add, and I don't agree with Bibi on everything, but I see why evangelicals have loved him so much over the years. Also because as American evangelicals, Canadian evangelicals, they don't see the sausage getting made locally, behind the scenes. But still, when Netanyahu says, what would have happened if I had said yes to Joe Biden in May of 24? Netanyahu calls it surrender. Biden
whole
would be
region would have
telling
been
him
different.
to stop fighting, and Yahya Sinwar was still alive, Mohammed Def, I think, was still alive, Nasrallah was still alive, and the Iran nuclear
And Assad
threat,
was still in power.
Assad was still in power.
Right.
So I think Netanyahu makes a pretty powerful case that by resisting the American president, which is hard to do, and he was under tremendous pressure to just get the hostages out and give up the rest of the war.
You have that. That's data point one. Data point two, Donald Trump has basically said to the Israeli people, as you mentioned, this is my guy.
Right.
And Israelis want to see a leader who can work with their most powerful ally, which is the United States. But data point three is, as you said, the polls. The polls don't take them to the bank. They do show us trends. They show us maybe the sentiment of Israelis on a given day, but they're too close to call. And if I was a betting man, which I'm thankfully not, I would not be able to tell you who's going to be the next prime minister, because I think that Netanyahu, despite all the claims that his time is over and Bennett is taking over, he has a good chance at winning if Israelis go to elections and when they go to an election.
Yeah. Right now, as war ends, we pray, right? We think that's happening. Many Christians are asking, so what do we do now? How can we continue to bless Israel, especially as the nation begins to rebuild? Well, Scripture gives us the answer in Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless Israel. And today, that calling matters more than ever. After years of hardship, Israel is entering a season of renewal. Families are rebuilding, small businesses are reopening, and communities from the Galilee to the Negev are coming back to life. And that's where Artza comes in. Artza is a beautiful subscription box that brings the Holy Land straight into your home, filled with handmade foods, crafts, and treasures created by small family artisans all across Israel. Each item tells a story of faith, beauty, and restoration. By subscribing, you're not only receiving something meaningful, you're directly blessing the people of Israel and helping their communities thrive again. This Christmas, bless Israel in a tangible way. Visit artsabox.com and use my code RR15 for 15% off. Lynn and I love Artza, and I know you will too. Bless Israel, experience the land, be part of its renewal with Artza. I want to talk specifically, we talked about the internal Israeli political ramifications of October 7th and does Bibi have a shot at winning again, so forth. And American evangelicals care about this because Netanyahu is almost the only name they know.
Right.
And there's been a lot of trust built over 3+ decades. Okay, but another name they know well is President Trump. President Trump has been super helpful to Israel. But he has now enshrined his 20-point peace plan at the UN Security Council. Now, I like a lot of this plan, but there is at least one, if not several, ticking time bombs from an Israeli center-right perspective. And maybe the biggest ticking time bomb in that is that this plan, now ratified and enshrined in international law by the UN Security Council, is this going to create a pathway to a sovereign, independent Palestinian state. Right. Now, Trump supported this in 2020 in his Deal of the Century plan, but Bibi didn't take it that seriously. I didn't take it that seriously, and I don't think you took it that seriously, that it was sort of a sop to the Arab world. Now, in a post-October 7th environment, what's your assessment of where is Trump heading, and how does Bibi and Israel as a nation, how do we navigate with because Trump is driving the ship at this point, not Netanyahu.
You're 100% right that this was a surprise to Israelis. Israelis thought that definitely post-October 7th, in this reality, what is the lesson we've learned? We can't concede territory. We can't allow terrorist groups to be in charge of places like Gaza, because that will become the launch pad for the greatest massacres that humankind can even imagine are possible. How could we ever agree to such a situation? I think the pathway...
And I would just add, and I just want to note this to my audience, I did a YouTube exclusive the other day looking at this whole issue of, is the world going to force a Palestinian state on Israel and do so successfully. And I look at a lot of the most recent polling data of Israelis and Palestinians. More than half of Palestinians are against a two-state solution. And in fact, 69% of West Bank Palestinians are against it. So, and I think maybe 20% of Israeli Jews at this point say that they support a two-state solution. So you got the world saying you have to have it when Palestinians don't want it, and the Palestinians that would live in the bulk of a sovereign state, they definitely don't want it, almost 7 in 10. And Israelis don't want it, so who wants it?
Well, on that point, though, Joe, I will say, the reason I think the world, including Donald Trump for that matter, keep going back to a two-state solution is because we, the people here, are not presenting an alternative.
Okay.
There's no vision for something else. It's just, let's manage the situation. We don't know where we're going. And the world, and definitely in the West, it's a weakness and a strength, but they want to see solutions. They want to see conflicts that are solvable. The pathway to a Palestinian state, I look at it as pathway could take a year, but it could also take 10, 15, and 20 or 25. So it's a long path. I think that what Trump wants to see is Israel embark on the beginning of that journey. But you are right, that is not something that is easily digested by the Israeli public today, or specifically by Netanyahu and his coalition.
Now, I want to be clear, I'm not being critical of Trump on this because he's being consistent to his original vision of the future of the Middle East, pre-Abraham Accords even. However, I would also add that it's pretty astonishing that this UN Security Council has passed this 20-point plan, because one of the things it does is takes Gaza out of the governing responsibility of the Palestinian Authority for the foreseeable future and puts it in Donald Trump's hands. He's the czar,
the
governor of Gaza, right? And we're going to make it great again, Yaakov. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to be vacationing in Gaza soon. So Israelis,
that's a good impression.
Well, I'm not sure if it is, but the fact that Trump has taken ownership of this problem and said, look, I'm going to work with the rest of the world, Israel, the Arab world, the Europeans, whomever, but I'm going to run this process. I actually think that's leadership. It requires trusting him, but I have more trust in President Trump's love and support for Israel than any American president in history. So, but that doesn't mean I have total trust. And so I'm trying to figure out what does Gaza look like? I mean, right now he doesn't even want Israel to disarm a group of about 100 Hamas. He doesn't want us to kill 100 hostages, 100 terrorists in a tunnel.
Donald Trump doesn't want the war to resume. Donald Trump wants the war to stay over. He wants us to stay at this lower intensity conflict and not the high intensity that it was until that when he came to Jerusalem and gave that speech and the hostages came back on October 13th. But for that to happen, we do need to see a change in Gaza, which we have yet to see. We need to see Hamas disarmed. Doesn't disarmament, Joel, also have to include the destruction of the remaining tunnels?
Absolutely.
You and I probably agree
so.
that it has to. Who's going to do that? It's not going to be the Qataris or the Turks or the Egyptians or the French or some other multinational force that comes into Gaza. It's either Israel or it's not going to happen. And Israel will not be able to stand by and watch as Hamas, in the 50% of Gaza that they still hold on to, what is outside the yellow line, that Hamas is going to rebuild, reassert control, and represent itself as a potential threat like it was on the eve of October 7th. That's unacceptable. I think it's unacceptable to us, obviously, to the Israeli public, and I think also to Donald Trump. He will understand, and he probably does understand, but he wants to try to see if he can get this off the ground. And if, together with the Arab countries, can put that pressure to bear on Hamas, that Hamas will even maybe willingly give up some of its weapons.
In your reporting, in your years of reporting, do you think the Saudis want and need a deal with the Israelis anymore? Or do you think that the Trump strike, the Netanyahu strikes that neutralized the Iran nuclear threat, plus the devastation in Gaza, which, the Saudi people, the Arab people have watched, they're not focused on the hostages. They've been focused on destruction in Gaza. And it's true, it's real. I've been there and it's apocalyptic. So How do you assess, as we go into 26, the prospect of a big game-changing peace deal?
I think it's possible. I think it hopefully will happen in the coming months. I think that the Saudis definitely want it. But they want it for a couple of reasons, but they also want it on their terms. And in their terms, they need to see Israel embark on what we were discussing before, this pathway or this journey towards a Palestinian state. They need to get something out of the Israelis, especially because of those images that you spoke about in Gaza. They have to pay that lip service to the young people within their own country, but also as they view themselves, and MBS views himself as the leader of the Arab and Muslim world. He needs to be able to explain to them, yes, I'm normalizing with Israel in the aftermath of the war in Gaza, but look what I got Israel to do.
Yes, I want to quibble maybe with one phrase, lip service. I think in my time with MBS, my impression was he was disgusted with the Palestinian Authority. He hated Hamas. Yeah, the Palestinians need a state. That's important, but I'm not going to make a big deal of it. That felt to me almost like lip service. Today, I think the situation is much more. I think it's changed for MBS
because of the war in Gaza.
Because he is an absolute autocrat. True, but he's got a street, and the street loves what he's doing in every area of modernization and economic growth and development. But they are horrified, really genuinely horrified by what's happened in Gaza. And so the question is all politics are local eventually, and so does MBS have, what room does he have to maneuver if he's being seen as, or portrayed as by Turkey and Qatar and Al Jazeera as
selling
the betrayer
out
of the Palestinian people?
I agree with you. I don't think we disagree. I think that he needs Netanyahu to give him that for him to be able to make that step forward. But the reason that he wants it, I think, splits into three. Number one, he understands, and he's getting now a closer alliance with the United States. But for that to retain itself and to be preserved, he has to find a way to normalize relations with Israel. You bring the other closest ally of the U.S. in this region together with you, that will help you keep America on your side.
It will help you in Congress also, where the
100%.
Democrats want to see an Abraham Accords deal. I mean, they don't like the Saudis so much, but they would love to see more peace in the Middle East.
And it will help you with arms sales and getting those ratified and confirmed. Number two, you mentioned Iran. Iran's not over, Joel. Iran is now, I think, for everything I hear from Israeli defense officials, it's not a question of if there will be another round, it's a question of when there will be another round. There are already reports that the Iranians have replenished their ballistic missile systems. They're back to about 2,000 rockets that can strike now in Israel like they were before the 12-day war. They're back to hundreds of ballistic missile launchers. About 250 had been destroyed during the 12-day war. They will rebuild their nuclear facilities as well. So the Saudis know that the country that is the most bent on preventing the Iranians, their arch nemesis, from getting nuclear weapons, is Israel. They want to be aligned with Israel. And then there's number three. He wants, as you said, to modernize his country, to march Saudi Arabia into the future. There is no better country to do that with, from a technological perspective, culturally. Every other thing you can think of is here with Israel. We are the most advanced country in this region. You want to be with us, and you want to partner to be able to take your country forward. The Emiratis get that. The Bahrainis got it. The Moroccans got it. Egypt and Jordan, they got it a bunch of years ago. Unfortunately, they didn't act on it the way they should have. But I think Saudi Arabia understands that, and this is just one other reason why I'm hopeful that we can get there.
Well, I hope you're right, because I hope you write a sequel to While Israel Slept, something along the lines of When Israel Woke Up and was able to figure out how to chart a new path throughout the Middle East. This is the book to get as you head into Hanukkah and Christmas. While Israel Slept, how Hamas surprised the most powerful military in the Middle East, the story of how October 7th happened.